You can feel it before anything in your outer world changes. There is a quiet pressure that has been gathering beneath the surface for weeks, and today it finally reaches the point where it can no longer remain contained. If you have been assuming that Mercury ending its retrograde simply means missed messages disappear, schedules become smoother, and everyday inconveniences fade away, then you are only seeing the smallest part of what has truly been unfolding. Ever since June 29th, Mercury has been retracing its path through Cancer, one of the most emotionally profound signs of the Zodiac. This journey has never been limited to calendars or communication. Instead, it has been guiding you into places within yourself that you may have believed were permanently locked away. Hidden memories, unfinished emotions, forgotten conversations, and pieces of your personal history have all been quietly rising from the depths of your subconscious. Layers that once felt buried beneath years of routine and emotional survival have slowly returned to your awareness. Now, on July 23rd, Mercury finally comes to a standstill before moving forward once again. The backward current ends. The haze begins to dissolve. Yet the truth of this moment is far more intense than most people realize. This is not the kind of clarity that gently comforts you. It is the kind that demands honesty. It is the kind that asks you to face something you have postponed for far too long. That is why, if you have spent restless nights replaying old conversations in your mind, hearing the voice of someone you have not spoken to in months as though they were standing beside you, there is a reason. If an unexplainable heaviness has settled in your chest, leaving you with the feeling that words are trapped inside you, waiting for the perfect moment to be spoken, there is also a reason. None of these experiences have been random. They have all been symptoms of a much larger process taking place beneath the surface, and in a moment that hidden process is going to become impossible to ignore. Before we reach that explanation, however, you need to understand the extraordinary sequence of events unfolding across this single day. This is not defined by one isolated astrological event. It is a chain reaction. 4 separate celestial activations unfold, one after another within the same day, creating an atmosphere where every emotional realization becomes amplified. Among all 12 zodiac signs, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn stand closest to the center of these unfolding energies. If you belong to one of those signs, then what you are hearing now may arrive exactly when you needed it most, because the answer you have been searching for has already begun moving toward you, regardless of whether you feel prepared to receive it. The retrograde itself was never a cosmic mistake or an inconvenient interruption. It was a carefully timed inner reconstruction. While many people reduce Mercury retrograde to stories about delayed travel, misunderstood messages, or unexpected appearances from former partners, this particular cycle carried an entirely different purpose. And deep down you have probably sensed that difference from the very beginning. Mercury did not reverse through just any sign. It reversed through Cancer, a realm governed by the moon, where emotions, memories, childhood experiences, family bonds, belonging, and the earliest foundations of identity all reside. Whenever Mercury retraces its steps through this deeply emotional territory, it does not simply interfere with daily plans. It invites your awareness back through the corridors of your own life. Reflect on the weeks that have just passed. Have forgotten memories returned with surprising clarity? Have scenes from years ago suddenly appeared so vividly that they carried the emotional weight of the original experience? Perhaps an interaction you believed had been completely resolved suddenly demanded your attention again, leaving you questioning everything you thought had already been settled. None of that emerged without purpose. Mercury has been tracing invisible emotional threads that have remained buried beneath protective habits, distractions, and carefully built emotional walls. It has been uncovering places within your psyche that have quietly influenced your decisions for years without your conscious awareness. There is another piece of this story that many people overlook, yet it changes the meaning of everything happening today. During the middle of this retrograde, on July the 12th, Mercury formed an exact alignment with the Sun, an event astrologers know as a cazimi. In that rare moment, Mercury occupied the very heart of the Sun, creating one of the most symbolically powerful alignments in astrology. Something was planted inside you during that exact meeting. It may not have arrived as a fully formed realization. It may have been nothing more than an instinct, a quiet certainty, or an emotional truth you could feel long before you possessed the language to explain it. It resembled the experience of recognizing an answer before your mind could organize it into words. That inner seed has remained alive beneath your conscious awareness for 11 days, quietly developing within your subconscious while everything else appeared uncertain. Now, as Mercury stations direct on July 23rd, that hidden understanding begins to emerge into the light. What once existed only as emotion now seeks expression through language. What once remained trapped within silence now asks to become conversation. The truth that could only be felt is finally ready to be spoken. Yet even this remarkable shift represents only one layer of what makes today extraordinary. If Mercury moving direct were the only celestial event occurring on July 23rd, the day would already carry tremendous significance. Instead, it unfolds within a much larger pattern of interconnected cosmic movements that transform this date into a genuine crossroads. The sequence begins long before sunrise. During the earliest hours of the day, Venus traveling through Virgo forms an exact quincunx with Saturn in Aries, creating the challenging 150-degree aspect that astrologers recognize as one of the most uncomfortable and psychologically demanding configurations in the entire astrological language. This alignment introduces a powerful emotional tension that prepares the stage for everything that follows, making today not simply a moment of understanding, but the beginning of an irreversible turning point whose deeper meaning is only just beginning to reveal itself. There are moments in astrology when two planetary forces seem completely incapable of finding common ground, yet the cosmos insists they meet anyway. That is exactly what this alignment creates. It brings together energies that naturally move in opposite directions and places them face to face until neither can avoid the conversation any longer. On a deeply personal level, this can feel like your responsibilities standing directly in front of your deepest desires, asking which one has truly been guiding your choices. It can feel like recognizing with complete honesty what your heart longs for inside a relationship, while simultaneously realizing that the existing foundation can no longer carry that vision. It may also appear through money, security, or practical circumstances that suddenly reveal a painful mismatch between the future you imagined and the reality supporting it today. The reason this experience feels so powerful is because neither planet occupies comfortable territory. Venus, moving through Virgo, becomes consumed by analysis, perfection, and the impossible pursuit of getting everything exactly right before allowing joy to exist. Saturn, traveling through Aries, struggles against a sign that naturally wants immediate movement, courage, and spontaneous action. Instead of flowing together, both planets amplify each other's discomfort, making every imbalance impossible to overlook. This is far beyond ordinary frustration. It is the universe revealing that something within your relationships or within the values shaping your decisions has drifted away from genuine alignment, and continuing to ignore that truth is no longer sustainable. As the day progresses, another layer of intensity unfolds. The Sun, newly established in its home sign of Leo, forms a challenging square with Chiron in Taurus, and the emotional landscape shifts dramatically. Chiron only entered Taurus last month for the first time since 1984, marking the beginning of an entirely new chapter of healing around self-worth and stability. Known as the wounded healer, Chiron exposes the places where old pain still quietly shapes present choices. While moving through Taurus, it shines a light on insecurities connected to personal value, the physical body, financial security, material resources, and the deeply human question of whether you genuinely believe you deserve the space you occupy in this world. Leo naturally longs to radiate confidence, creativity, and authentic self-expression. It wants to stand in the light without apology. Yet, as the sun presses against Chiron, another voice emerges from within, asking whether you truly believe you have earned the right to be seen. The conflict becomes impossible to ignore. One part of you feels called to reveal your authentic self, while another still carries old wounds whispering that you are somehow not enough. That inner collision grows louder throughout the day, creating a powerful emotional crossroads where confidence and vulnerability meet face to face. Then, at exactly 6:58 p.m., Coordinated Universal Time, Mercury finally stations direct, and everything that has been held beneath the surface begins to move. It is as though a barrier that has contained weeks of emotional processing suddenly gives way. Every realization that has quietly formed during the retrograde, every feeling that remained difficult to explain, every sentence left unfinished, and every truth you postponed speaking, begins pressing toward expression. Yet because this breakthrough arrives immediately after the emotional strain created by the Venus-Saturn quincunx and the deeply personal wounds awakened through the Sun and Chiron square, the clarity does not arrive wrapped in comfort. Instead, it arrives with unmistakable honesty. It strips away illusion and asks for authenticity, even when authenticity feels vulnerable. But even then, the cosmic story has not yet reached its conclusion. Roughly 2 hours later, another meaningful transition unfolds as the moon leaves the emotionally intense waters of Scorpio and enters Sagittarius. The emotional atmosphere changes almost immediately. The weight that has been pressing against your spirit begins to loosen. The emotional pressure that has built throughout the day finally finds release, allowing space for hope, perspective, and forward movement to return. After the truth has been acknowledged and spoken, your emotional horizon expands once again, making it possible to imagine a future beyond the heaviness that has surrounded the previous weeks. 4 separate celestial events, unfolding within a single day, merge into one extraordinary turning point. Everything has been leading toward this moment. Earlier, I mentioned that there was a reason old conversations have continued echoing through your thoughts, that familiar voices have refused to disappear, and words have remained trapped inside your heart, waiting for the right moment to emerge. The explanation becomes clear now. Mercury stations direct today at exactly 16 degrees and 18 minutes of Cancer. Within astrology, every degree of the zodiac carries its own symbolic image through what are known as Sabian symbols. The image associated with this precise degree is, the seed grows into knowledge and life. Pause with those words for a moment, because they reveal the deeper purpose of everything you have experienced. This is not the symbolism of a sudden flash of inspiration or an unexpected revelation appearing without preparation. Instead, it speaks of gradual growth, quiet development, invisible transformation occurring beneath the surface long before any visible result appears. Somewhere within you, something has been taking shape without demanding attention. Perhaps it is a clearer understanding of your identity. Perhaps it is a boundary that has slowly become impossible to ignore. Perhaps it is the truth about a relationship that your heart has recognized, even while your mind continued searching for certainty. Today, that hidden process reaches the surface, not because external forces are pushing you, but because inner growth has naturally reached the point where it can no longer remain unseen. The realization emerges because it is ready. The wisdom has matured enough to become language. Throughout this retrograde, nothing was wasted. Every confusing moment, every emotional detour, every memory that resurfaced was part of an incubation period preparing you for this exact breakthrough. Yet this symbol also carries an important reminder. A newly sprouted seed requires protection before it becomes a tree. The insight arriving today deserves patience rather than haste. You may finally possess the words to express what has lived inside you for weeks, but that does not mean every outcome must unfold immediately. Allow this truth to establish roots before expecting it to transform your entire life. Give it care, intention, and time, because what begins today is not a passing emotion. It is the beginning of something fundamental. For Cancer, especially those with the Sun, Moon, or rising in this sign, this message becomes deeply personal. Mercury has spent its retrograde journey moving backward through your first house, the realm governing identity, physical presence, self-perception, and the way you present yourself to the world. During these past weeks, it may have felt as though your own thoughts became impossible to escape. Every interaction invited another layer of self-analysis. You questioned how others viewed you, replayed conversations searching for mistakes, wondered whether the people closest to you genuinely understood your heart or simply accepted the version of you that felt easiest to understand. Little by little, you withdrew from expressing yourself fully. Not because your voice disappeared, but because the fear of being misunderstood became stronger than your willingness to be seen, and today marks the beginning of releasing that invisible burden. What made this retrograde especially difficult was not simply the confusion surrounding your circumstances. It was the way it quietly reshaped your relationship with yourself. Instead of allowing your natural emotional awareness to guide you, it slowly convinced you that every feeling required a defense, every expression required editing, and every interaction demanded caution. If someone looked away too quickly, you wondered whether you had done something wrong. If a message remained unanswered, your mind filled the silence with stories of rejection. Without realizing it, you began examining every word before speaking it, questioning every reaction before allowing yourself to feel it. Eventually, the constant self-editing became so relentless that even you struggled to recognize which version reflected your authentic self and which one had simply been created to avoid discomfort. That chapter reaches its conclusion today. As Mercury resumes direct motion in your own sign, something much deeper than communication begins to heal. You are no longer being asked to perform a carefully controlled version of yourself for the comfort of everyone around you. Instead, you are being invited back into your own truth. The endless cycle of second-guessing gradually releases its grip. The mental haze that has surrounded every decision begins to dissolve, revealing something that never truly disappeared. Beneath all the uncertainty, beneath every anxious thought and every emotional defense, your genuine voice has been waiting patiently. It has not become weaker. It has become clearer. It no longer asks for permission before it exists. Earlier in the day, the square between the Sun in Leo and Chiron in Taurus reaches directly into one of your oldest emotional wounds, the belief that making yourself smaller somehow keeps everyone else comfortable. That belief did not originate from your own soul. It was absorbed somewhere along the path of your life until it began masquerading as truth. Today, it rises into your awareness so you can finally recognize it for what it has always been, an inherited illusion rather than an authentic part of your identity. Once you see it clearly, it begins losing its authority over your choices. That is why today carries so much emotional significance for Cancer. The silence that has defined recent weeks finally gives way to honest expression. The version of yourself stepping forward now no longer apologizes for taking up space. Speak with sincerity. Draw the boundary that has remained unspoken. Allow the world to meet the person you have quietly been becoming. Because in many ways, this truly is the beginning of an entirely new introduction. For Libra, the shift unfolds within an entirely different area of life, yet it carries the same unmistakable sense of release. Over the past month, Mercury has been retracing its path through your 10th house, the realm connected with career, public reputation, achievement, and the direction of your professional future. It may have seemed as though every important step encountered invisible resistance. Messages disappeared into silence. Projects lost momentum without explanation. Conversations that should have produced clear results instead dissolved into misunderstanding. Perhaps you stood at the threshold of an important opportunity, whether it involved advancement, the beginning of something significant, or a negotiation capable of changing your future, only to watch progress repeatedly slip away before your eyes. The greatest challenge was never the delay itself. It was the uncertainty surrounding its cause. You questioned whether circumstances beyond your control were creating the obstacles, or whether some hidden hesitation within yourself had quietly become the true barrier. That unanswered question has weighed heavily on your confidence. Today, as Mercury turns direct, that uncertainty begins to disappear. The perspective arriving now reveals something unexpected. Those interruptions were never intended as punishment. They were creating space for correction. They slowed your progress so overlooked details could be discovered before they developed into larger problems. They encouraged revisions that would otherwise have been ignored. The plan you carried several weeks ago was incomplete, even if you could not recognize that at the time. The version you hold today has been strengthened through every revision, every disappointment, and every moment that demanded greater patience. The quincunx between Venus and Saturn carries particular importance for Libra because Venus governs your sign. Saturn now asks difficult but necessary questions about the foundations supporting your professional life. Which ambitions are supported by genuine substance? Which achievements are driven more by appearance than authentic fulfillment? Which responsibilities continue nourishing your future, and which ones quietly consume your energy while offering only the illusion of success? The answer emerging today may arrive as a professional breakthrough, an opportunity that finally begins moving after weeks of stillness, or a long-delayed decision that suddenly becomes unmistakably clear. It feels as though someone has opened every curtain inside a room where you have been searching for direction in darkness. Believe what you now understand. Allow that clarity to guide your next decision, because the period of waiting has reached its natural conclusion. Capricorn, your lesson unfolds through the people standing closest to your heart. Mercury has spent its retrograde journey moving backward through your 7th house, the domain of committed relationships, meaningful partnerships, and every one-on-one connection that shapes your life. During the past month, this area has become far more emotionally demanding than you expected. You are someone who naturally values composure, discipline, and emotional restraint. Maintaining stability often feels safer than revealing vulnerability. Yet this retrograde quietly dismantled that familiar protection. Conversations began carrying emotional weight that surprised even you. Remarks that once would have passed unnoticed suddenly reached places within you that remained unexpectedly sensitive. Disagreements you believed had been resolved returned with remarkable intensity, asking for attention once again. If you are completely honest with yourself, those conflicts never truly disappeared. They were simply placed aside, because confronting emotional complexity often seemed less efficient than continuing forward. Whenever life becomes emotionally unpredictable, your instinct has always been to retreat toward work, responsibility, and measurable achievement. Places where effort creates visible results and everything follows understandable rules. Immersing yourself in productivity has felt far easier than navigating the uncertain landscape of another person's emotions. Yet this retrograde has gently refused to let that familiar escape remain available, preparing you for the conversation that now waits directly in front of you. Yet no matter how many times you tried to step away from what felt uncomfortable, this retrograde refused to let the story end unfinished. Every attempt to distract yourself, every effort to bury difficult emotions beneath routines or responsibilities, somehow led you back to the very conversation you kept postponing. The universe continued placing it in front of you, because avoidance was never going to create resolution. Today, as Mercury finally resumes direct motion, the interference begins to fade. Misunderstandings that have multiplied over the past several weeks gradually untangle, conversations become easier to navigate, and the emotional static that distorted your perception starts disappearing. More importantly, an entirely different realization rises to the surface, one capable of changing the way you approach every meaningful relationship from this point forward. You begin to understand that vulnerability has never been the opposite of strength. Speaking honestly about your needs, admitting that something hurt you, or expressing emotions you once believed had to remain hidden does not weaken your position. Instead, it creates the stability that genuine connection has always required. Earlier in the day, the challenging square between the Sun in Leo and Chiron in Taurus exposes another layer of truth. The emotional walls you carefully constructed to protect yourself from disappointment have also prevented the people who care about you from reaching the real person standing behind them. The breakthrough does not require demolishing every defense you have ever built. It asks for something far more balanced. It asks you to create an opening, a place where trust can move in both directions. For Capricorn, this becomes the defining lesson of today. The conversation waiting in front of you cannot be transformed through carefully measured diplomacy or perfectly controlled responses. It requires honesty without disguise. It requires the version of your truth that exists before editing, before protecting, before calculating every possible reaction. On the other side of that conversation stands a partnership capable of becoming stronger than anything silence has ever managed to preserve. What you choose to express today becomes the beginning of a completely different foundation. Yet it is essential to understand that July 23rd is not the destination. It is the moment the journey truly begins. The events unfolding today prepare you for a much larger sequence already approaching. 3 days after Mercury turns direct, Saturn stations retrograde on July 26th. Often described as the Lord of Karma, Saturn pauses its forward movement and begins an extended period of internal review, examining every structure, every commitment, every boundary, and every responsibility you have established. Whatever truth you acknowledge today will not remain a simple realization. Saturn will ask whether you genuinely intend to live according to it. Then, on July 27th, another powerful alignment arrives as the Sun forms an opposition with Pluto, one of the most psychologically intense aspects of the entire year. Themes surrounding power, control, hidden motivations, and the unseen forces influencing both your inner world and the larger systems around you rise into full view. The emotional clarity you gain today becomes the very thing that allows you to remain steady when Pluto's transformative intensity begins revealing what has long remained concealed. That same day also marks another significant shift, as the lunar nodes leave the Virgo-Pisces axis and enter Leo and Aquarius, beginning an 18-month cycle that redirects collective evolution toward authentic self-expression, shared innovation, decentralized influence, and humanitarian progress. The personal revelations emerging within you today are not isolated experiences. They are quietly preparing you to participate in a much broader transformation unfolding across the collective. This is why today's significance reaches far beyond the end of a Mercury retrograde. It is not simply about clearer communication or smoother plans. It is about developing emotional resilience rooted in truth, because the days ahead will require exactly that. The silence that has surrounded your heart is ending. The only remaining question is whether you are willing to allow your authentic voice to emerge. This retrograde has carried you into places within yourself that were never comfortable. It guided you through memories, emotions, and questions you may never have chosen to revisit on your own. Yet now you return carrying something remarkably valuable. You return with a clearer understanding of what your heart genuinely needs. For Cancer, that truth centers on rediscovering your authentic identity, after releasing the exhausting habit of constantly adapting yourself for everyone else's expectations. For Libra, it becomes the recognition of your true professional direction once appearances are separated from genuine purpose. For Capricorn, it reveals the words your relationships have been waiting to hear, the honest expressions you postponed because exposing your heart felt unfamiliar. Throughout these past weeks, something has been quietly developing beneath the surface. Like a seed hidden beneath the soil, it has continued growing even when nothing seemed to be happening. Today, that hidden process finally becomes visible. What emerges is no longer uncertain, hesitant, or incomplete. It arrives with quiet confidence, carrying everything you have gradually uncovered while Mercury retraced its path through the deepest layers of your inner world. Honor that realization. Do not dismiss it the moment it appears. Do not allow old habits of doubt to convince you to retreat back into emotional hiding after finally speaking your truth. Everything you now recognize has been moving steadily toward this exact moment ever since the retrograde first began. The understanding is ready. The clarity is ready. The opportunity is ready. Now the only remaining question is whether you are ready to step forward alongside it. After today, the landscape before you is no longer the same, because the person walking into it is no longer the same either. Thank you for staying through this journey and sharing this moment together. If today's message resonated with you, and you would like to continue exploring these powerful astrological shifts, remember to subscribe so you never miss what comes next. Your support means more than you know. I would also love to hear what this retrograde revealed for you, so share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Until we meet again, take good care of yourself, and I will see you in the next journey through the stars.